If you participate in Cyber Monday, you are a good American. And if you do it on Amazon, you know what? You can help the Young Turks. You use our link for Amazon. It's on tytnetwork.com. It's also in the description box below. And then a small part of the proceeds come to us at the Young Turks. It doesn't cost you anything extra. It's super easy, and it winds up helping us tremendously. This is how we do it. We do the show together with you guys. It's a good way you can help. Thank you. And thank you for being a patriot. Irritate Bill O'Reilly. Say Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas, and use the TYT Amazon link.
Welcome to the first hour of the Young Turks. Thanksgiving's over, a much-needed, much-appreciated Thanksgiving break, but we're back. Us being Ben Mankiewicz and myself, Cenk Uygur, still out of the studio, although I believe he will be back for the full show tomorrow. He'll be flying in just before the show.
Yes, Cenk is en route back, sort of, from the East Coast.
Yeah,
where he's been, it's not like he was taking.
No, he wasn't on the beach all.
I don't have to explain anything to you people.
No, but I think that they should understand that he didn't take like a week and a half vacation.
He could.
He's doing meetings. He was going to the premiere of the movie over and over.
Tons of premieres of the Mad as Hell movie.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, I don't like that I have to explain it.
You don't have to.
Summertime.
We have that sort of relationship with our audience.
Summertime, yeah, this is the relationship we have with the audience. Summertime Yeti says, "Why aren't you ever on time? It rude."
Yeah, that's true. Well, look, we were late. There was a few different reasons. I'm going to take most of the blame. But we are here, and don't worry, I'm sure we're going to go long past the first hour. So you'll get at least a full first hour. Lots to talk about. As we were doing our production meeting, it started off with a little bit of Ferguson stuff, and now I believe that'll probably be the entire first hour, as it probably should be, because it is the most important story around the country right now. So unless you have anything else, why don't we jump right into it?
Just a little tidbit of news today. Bill Cosby has resigned from the Board of Trustees of Temple.
Yeah.
They clearly asked him to, and he did, saying he didn't admit anything, just said, "I love my university, don't want to be a distraction."
Yeah. If I could be unbearable here, hopefully Jimmy Dore's watching this so he can use this against me for months. As a former member of the Board of Trustees of UConn, I think this was the right move for him to make.
You were on the Board of Trustees?
I was, actually. I was the one student
for
2 years.
Oh, nice. All right.
Yeah.
Well, good for you.
Yeah, I didn't do anything. It wasn't really worth anything to me or the university.
You get to say it.
I do. And
of course, I get to say it, too. I was on the board at Tufts University.
Were you really?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, it accomplishes as much. You should lie more effectively in the future. Okay, why don't we jump right into it? We got a lot of Ferguson-related coverage to get to, a lot of people saying awful things on the radio, on TV. Let's start off with a non-media person, a politician. Missouri Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder was on the Laura Ingraham show, and as with many people in that area, we're still dealing with the fallout from the lack of an indictment for Darren Wilson, and he thinks that there should be prosecutions, and as with Rudy Giuliani last week, let's find out who he thinks should be prosecuted.
By the way, that last soundbite we had to bleep out, burn the blank MF down, burn the B down, burn the B. He was telling me burn the buildings. This is the lovely stepfather of Michael Brown. Was this where Michael Brown was getting his inspiration? From this guy? Lewis Head. How many of the networks really focused on that? Did you hear that soundbite from the stepfather of Michael Brown? What's your reaction?
That he should be arrested and charged with inciting to riot.
Yeah, well, I mean, why hasn't that already happened? I mean, there should be mass arrests. Well, I mean, I've got to say, we had a sign in our house, and it was kind of a humorous sign. My father was a big gun enthusiast, and he was a hunter, and he just was a former Navy guy in World War II. But right. He had a sign that said, "We shoot looters." I mean, we shoot looters. That was like, people think, well, how do you do that? Well, remember, South Central L.A., businesses were protected on rooftops.
Nearly 300 miles down the road in Joplin, Missouri, we had a massive tornado that your listeners all learned about 3 years ago. And I was down there doing a day of work with state legislators to try to help those folks. And I saw "Looters will be shot" homemade signs. Now, there was none of this in Joplin. Here was a nearly 300-pound, 6'4" tall young man charging this officer who had already been beaten.
So, Lewis Head, the stepfather of Michael Brown, was heard on video saying, "Let's burn this bitch down." I assume that's what he said, and that was their reaction. And then the cute little anecdote about the shooting the looters, that is very humorous.
It is funny to have a sign saying that you will shoot people who might come to visit your house. You will take their life.
Exactly.
Take all, as Clint Eastwood said in Unforgiven, you kill a man, you take all he's got and all he's ever going to have. It's hilarious. I think it was meant to be funny in Unforgiven.
Yeah.
She is a poisonous little troll. Let me tell you something. Just because your father served in World War II in the Navy doesn't mean he's any tougher than anybody else. And if you try and take patriotism again, you poisonous little, what did I call her the first time? Troll.
Troll, yeah.
You're trying to be cool.
That's safe.
Yeah. That doesn't belong to you. My father served in World War II, and he hated the fact that he might have killed people, and he never wanted to kill another person, nor did he want to see anybody killed. And you're less patriotic, and so is your dumb dad.
Yeah. But by the way,
your dad's not dumb. I don't know your dad. I take it back instantly.
Well, he did put the sign up, though.
He did put the sign up.
There's a chance.
But it might have been one of those hilarious murdering jokes.
Exactly. Look, I guess the math does possibly work out. But I even question whether or not he was in World War II. She's exactly the sort of person that very often they will say that they did something earlier in their life or their parents did something. Turns out it wasn't even true. Feel free to let me know.
I can't, I'm sorry, John. The usurpation of patriotism.
That she didn't even do.
It's not even hers, right? You know, it's just, and it's like, and the equation of service and gun ownership and intolerance of life unless it's yours is repugnant. Yeah. And she's repugnant. She's a repugnant little poisonous troll.
Yeah. Well, and also, imagine a person with empathy and then try to be a little bit like that person. Imagine that your son or your stepson had died, and then you thought, okay, at least maybe there will be some justice, even though you've grown up in a community that has told you there will not be justice. And then there isn't. There's no indictment. So even if you don't think there should have been an indictment or that he was wrong in any way to kill Michael Brown, imagine the state of mind of the stepfather at that point to say, oh, look at him, what a nice example. He just witnessed what he sees as a great injustice. And the idea that, your father, who apparently was in the Navy in World War II, never swore growing up, that's a little bit hard to believe.
Also, don't mitigate it, John. I know you don't mean to, but, he didn't just witness what he perceived as a great injustice. It is an injustice. Now, maybe you think Darren Wilson's not responsible for that and shouldn't be made to pay. Mm-hmm. But you can't, if you're a human being with a soul, think that Michael Brown's death was justice. You can't.
No, but they do.
You can't think it. Well, then you're inhuman.
Yes,
then you
I agree.
lack a basic core humanity, because his death is an injustice. And that there is no satisfaction of that for his family, you're exactly right. They should feel outrage. And guess what? Saying burn the, whatever he said, burn the MRF down, burn the buildings down, or bitches down, I guess. You probably wouldn't have to, you could probably say buildings.
Yeah, I think they wouldn't believe
buildings
that.
Is a safe word.
Yeah.
When you ask this lieutenant governor, what's his, Kinder.
Kinder, yeah.
When you ask Lieutenant Governor Kinder, what are your thoughts there? Why is it not in the realm of his heart, his black heart, not to say, well, what I feel is that he shouldn't have said that, but I feel such enormous sympathy for a father who's lost his son, and he must feel outraged, but he's got to respect the justice system, and you can't go saying that people should burn stuff down.
I don't want him to say that either, but
you could make your point and show it.
He's not just a radio host. He's the lieutenant governor of the state in question. And coming out of situations like this, when you're in the media, you get to have one or more takes. And his take is that the person who should be prosecuted, the person who should be pursued by the police, is the aggrieved stepfather. And so we want to bring back a video clip that we showed you last week of another former politician in this case, and who he thinks should be pursued by the police. Here's Rudy Giuliani.
He came forward because he was so offended by the lies that were being told. You remember, there were 4 witnesses who said that Brown was shot in the back.
Not true.
Which are total lies. If that's in front of the
one said that the officer Wilson was standing over him, shooting him.
Totally untrue again, disproven completely by the autopsy and the forensics. I mean, I disagree with the prosecutor on only one thing. I would prosecute all those people for perjury.
Wow, really?
Well, I mean, to testify falsely in a case in which you can put a man in jail for the rest of his life is an extremely serious
But you know
crime.
how unreliable eyewitness testimony is? I mean, I think his belief, according to him, is it's just unreliable. And so these people may believe they saw what they didn't see.
It's not unreliable. These are people who are friends of his. These are people who have an axe to grind.
So he can comprehend the idea of friends wanting to protect someone they know, but for some reason when it comes to cops protecting their own, perhaps prosecutors protecting cops that they know, you just can't imagine how that could possibly bias them.
By the way, the only real friend of Michael Brown who saw this was the kid who was with him, who did not testify that. So they aren't friends. He's lying. Rudy Giuliani is lying. Here's what I would do. I would look at every single person Rudy Giuliani prosecuted. Yes. Because I think they all deserve to be let free, because I guarantee you he broke the law. Yeah. Because his lack of interest in justice is...
He said they're not unreliable. All of them are lying purposefully to the police.
And Megyn Kelly, who can't help but not be totally dumb, even though she works at Fox, she has moments where she realizes, she thinks, well, you can't prosecute those people. The reason the grand jury didn't indict was because they heard different depictions of the events from the witnesses. So they didn't think there was enough to indict because the prosecutor didn't try. Like we all know.
Or if you had different, like maybe then you have a trial if everybody's giving a different account of what happened.
Right, but nobody thinks that the people who said one thing are lying, and the fact of the matter is a lot of people, what about the people who said he wasn't bum rushing him, right? Which was most people who said that he was not charging at him. Are they lying? Should they be prosecuted too?
He believes so.
And then for a former prosecutor, I mean, how out of it is Rudy Giuliani? And these guys keep putting him back on the air. When she says it's not, she says, well, it's eyewitness testimony unreliable, because apparently Megyn Kelly has read an article in the last 10 years. But Rudy Giuliani, it's reliable. It's reliable. They're lying. No, eyewitness testimony is unreliable. We know that for a fact. Let me tell one tiny story, not having to do with me, but an amazing piece that I read, I think from Dahlia Lithwick a few years ago. And it's staggering. It's about a woman who was a rape victim. And she survived and testified against her accuser, who they arrested, tried, and convicted. Then later, a few years later, 3-4 years later, DNA evidence came back proving that he was not the rapist and proving that another man who had been convicted of other sexual assaults was the rapist. So it seems pretty clear.
So she was actually raped, but by a different man.
Turned out she was raped by a different guy, a guy who was a convicted sex offender. Now, she'd had a terrible ordeal, and obviously her eyewitness testimony was unreliable, right? She was in the middle of a terrible assault. But what else didn't is that she still dreamed of the assault on a regular basis, and she dreamt of the guy who didn't do it. Like, that's how unreliable the testimony was. And they let this guy go, but he'd spent. So it's unbelievably unreliable. And obviously I don't say that to castigate the victim in that case, but merely to show, wow, it's staggering how your brain can play tricks on what you've seen.
Yeah, and it's possible that even the brain of a cop could be wrong in some way about what he saw or thought he saw.
Let me talk just for 10 seconds more about, what's his first name?
Peter
Richard?
Kinder.
Peter Kinder. So most people who who witnessed this ordeal in Ferguson saw the governor of Ferguson, Jay Nixon, sort of not step to the plate in a number of ways. Right? Was that your sense?
I mean, I think that he felt that it wasn't his place to get involved, or it was
it's his place. He's the governor of the state, so I would say it was his place to get involved.
I would have loved for him to do something.
Right. I mean, if it had been in Kentucky, I would say it was not Jay Nixon's responsibility to get involved. But seeing as how it was in Missouri, so and calling in the National Guard too late and didn't really allowing that militarization to go on. But then and he's a Democrat. But as always, when you're about to criticize a Democrat, and he's worthy of criticism, Jay Nixon, you realize, oh my God. Look at the Republican behind him. Look at this Peter Kinder guy. Now you're afraid, what happens if Jay Nixon takes a trip to Kansas? And Pete Kinder's in charge of Missouri for 4 hours.
Yeah.
What havoc is he going to wreak?
Yeah, just remember that picture of him, man. He's a grizzly guy. Also, a little news update. I don't know if this was really in question, but just in case it was, Darren Wilson will apparently not be getting any sort of severance after resigning from the Ferguson police force. No severance, no extension of benefits of any form, at least that's what the mayor is saying as of right now. Yeah.
And Lord knows he doesn't deserve it. He killed a kid who didn't have a gun, who was charging him after.
Had a death
by the way,
wish, apparently
charging after he'd clearly been shot.
He'd already been shot. He then ran 150 feet away, turned around, and ran back for more shots.
I'm done talking about it. But the reaching for his waistband, which is the universal cop code for, I thought he might have a gun that he obviously didn't have before when I was fighting with him.
Yeah.
So he reached for his gun. Do you think, and based on, I've read every witness's testimony now, right? And what seems incredibly clear is the look that Darren Wilson described as rage was puzzlement of, why am I being shot? I can't believe I'm being shot, which is the most human thing that we could imagine happening in that case.
Yeah.
And reaching for his waistband was because he'd been shot.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's believable that the cop could think he was reaching for a gun, even though he'd already testified that he didn't think he had a gun. But I don't think Michael Brown would forget that he didn't have a gun and reach for it. It doesn't make any sense.
But the injustice that Rudy Giuliani and these guys want prosecutors on Michael Brown's poor stepfather and on the people whose testimony was not fully believed by the grand jury. That's right. That's the injustice. No, you're right. Keep doing your job.
Yeah, and don't worry, we've got a little bit more Rudy Giuliani for you a little bit later in the hour. But let's change it up. A different group that's getting involved in Ferguson. The Oath Keepers have come to Ferguson. If you're not familiar with them, I'll give you all the details in just a second. They say that they're coming there to keep the peace, but they're already having run-ins with the police, let alone the actual protesters there. Some of the Oath Keepers were on tops of houses and buildings in Ferguson, and they were wielding weapons. They said that they were protecting against looting. But the police were worried that they were going to be involved in possibly a deadly conflict. They did not have any sort of permit.
Those guys? No way.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. And so they were forced out. Here's a quote coming from Stuart Rhodes, who's the group's national leader. He says, "We had an alarming incident that happened last night with our team spotting what looked like a Fed," talking about the federal police there, three-man sniper team moving into a nearby house on higher ground and then pointing their rifles at our team of American combat veterans while our team was guarding the buildings against looters. Now,
we had an alarm that happened last night. Can we put that back up
they
there?
were all combat veterans.
Last night with our team spotting what looked like a Fed three-man sniper team moving. So they think that there was a three-man sniper team of
Feds.
They think it's Feds?
Yeah, they're saying that they had a run-in with the federal forces.
Oh, okay. So they weren't saying that it was protesters.
No,
I'm like, yeah, the protesters had a sniper team.
No.
Yeah,
not exactly.
That sounds plausible.
Now, like I said, if you're not familiar with the Oath Keepers, they're made up of law enforcement officers, current and former military personnel, and first responders. All that's good so far. Who have vowed not to enforce gun laws and others they deem to be unconstitutional. They are considered by the Southern Poverty Law Center to be one of the most extreme and perhaps in the future worrisome of the patriot groups that sprang up after Barack Obama was elected. These are the groups that feel like they know what the Constitution truly says. They don't need to enforce laws. And they're coming out and saying, look, we are in law enforcement. Some of us are in the military. We are not going to enforce laws that we don't agree with.
They're current and former military personnel. I assume it's former law enforcement officers too. Couldn't hack it, and you can't pick and choose the laws you enforce, except unless it's like, jaywalking.
Yeah.
Like you can't not to enforce gun laws, just like you can't choose not to enforce sexual assault laws. Although apparently those laws don't get enforced sometimes either, and neither do the
universities.
And apparently, many police officers are allowed to discharge their weapon freely, just by saying somebody reached for their waistband or they felt threatened. That's the way the law is written, and that's crazy.
Yeah. Now, if you are afraid that this is an extremist group in some fashion, don't worry. One of the local volunteer coordinators named Andrew said he takes steps to keep racists or other people with an axe to grind off the patrols. Now, remember, these are people who are coming to that area knowing that there are going to be protests, knowing there could be violence, going up on rooftops with assault weapons, but no one with an axe to grind, no racists. They're just there to protect good people's homes and property. They're not looking to actually shoot or kill anyone, certainly not. I mean, it's a rough situation. The people protesting in Ferguson obviously are responding both to the immediate situation, what they see as a great injustice, and then also this as the most current manifestation of a decades and decades long systematic series of abuses and causes for mistrust in that area and around the country. And that's what they're fighting against. And look, they're drawing in some people who do just want to loot, people who don't care about the issue, they don't care about the struggle. They're looking to take advantage of it. But the protesters are not the only ones that are going in with ulterior motives. Like, these guys are going because they want to shoot and kill protesters. They want an excuse to kill people. And thankfully, the police did the right thing in forcing them to come down.
Yeah, because they're too crazy for the Ferguson police.
That's a good point.
Read the last quote from Stuart
the last quote. This is from the national leader. He says, historically, the government almost always fails to protect people.
Except if I may, in World War II, in the defeat of communism, which you guys love so much.
Yeah.
So in defeating the Soviet Union, in beating the Nazis in World War II.
I would say the Civil War, perhaps.
The Civil War.
Those people needed some protecting.
There were some people who needed some protection then. Your Social Security, which your parents get, your Medicaid, which keeps your parents alive, all the social programs that you hate from the New Deal, they've protected people. We've protected people for years and years and years. The government makes a tremendous number of mistakes. The government, with OSHA, protects workers who, when allowed to operate under the incredibly lax confines of big business without regulation, where workers just fell off scaffolding and got black lung disease.
Yeah.
So the government has protected more people than the Oath Keepers can count to. But of course, for them, so at least more than like 15.
Exactly.
But to the Oath Keepers, right, government is just all it is Ruby Ridge and Waco, and the government is nothing except that.
Yeah. Yeah, the government always fails to protect people, which is why almost everyone in America currently has Ebola.
That's right. That's right. Oh, the government also protected us from Ebola. Cured it. Salt didn't cure Ebola, but kept
stopped
Ebola
it from having an outbreak in America.
Completely, yeah.
No credit given.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, this is going to be fun. I don't often get to speak about her in positive terms. We're going to start with a new one. Those of us who feel like justice was not done in Ferguson have a new ally, a strange ally, someone I'm not used to being on the same issue, the same side of an issue with. It's Nancy Grace. Take a look at this.
You know, when people say it just doesn't add up, I'll tell you what doesn't add up. These photos. Because I was expecting to see, and we've all seen them, I have looked at them, I have studied them, I was expecting to see his face mangled. And I hear what he's saying, that he was afraid, and this happened, and that happened, but I always go back to the beginning, and the beginning is this. You got an armed man and an unarmed man. The unarmed man is shot 6 to 7 times. One of those may be a reentry. That's why it may say it may be 6 to 7 times. He unloaded many, many more bullets. Why? He doesn't even have a bruise, right? It's red. He's got a red mark. I don't see it. Look, do you know how many times I've ever sided against a cop? Never. But to me, this is bigger than a badge. And I don't like speaking out against a cop, but this doesn't add up.
So she's obviously being very affected there.
She was about to cry.
She was about to cry.
Yeah.
Because he is making her go against a cop. Now, we often believe that she sort of jumps to conclusions when it comes to stuff like this, but this time she's done her research. She has seen the photos, she's looked at the photos, and she's studied the photos. So she's sure of what's coming from those photos. But yeah, I will admit that her being on my side is the first thing that makes me think that maybe I'm wrong about this entire thing.
I hear you, but I think it's the opposite way around. I think that the injustice done in this case was so hideous that you get even people like Nancy Grace, who are, she was a prosecutor, and who are prosecutors at heart, who think, okay, this was a crime. This was a crime committed against Michael Brown. And it should be prosecuted. And maybe he'd get acquitted, because it is very hard to acquit a police officer who says that their life doesn't have to be in danger. They have to think their life is in danger, and that's a very different standard. Right. Well, I don't know that he clearly did. That's what he clearly said.
He seems to be pissing his pants throughout his entire testimony.
Look, we don't need to rehash all that. But
okay.
But so for Nancy Grace to think, my God, this was an easy prosecution. Do you have the other video of her talking about how easy it is?
Let's go to the second one.
Let's take a look at Nancy Grace talking about how easy it is in normal circumstances, and she's a former prosecutor, to get an indictment.
And another thing, grand jury. I have presented to grand juries so many times, I can't even count them. On a single day, we would present 75 to 150 cases to a grand jury, and we would do that 2 times a week when I had grand jury duty. I feel that the district attorney, as much as I respect him in other ways, used the grand jury to do what he wanted them to do as his tool. He didn't want to drop it. He presented it in such a way that this grand jury would not bring charges, and I don't like that.
What was missing?
The grand jurors are like sheep. They're babes in the woods. The prosecutor's duty is to seek the truth. And I am telling you that prosecutors, if they want an indictment, they will get an indictment. When I went to a grand jury, I went to the grand jury on each case because I believed the offense had been committed and I had the right guy, or the police had the right guy. And I went in there to present them our evidence. If I didn't think there was a case, I would never have gone to the grand jury. You don't use the grand jury to achieve your personal gain, to achieve what you want them to do. You go in to get a true verdict.
Judgment for Nancy Grace.
Woo!
Yeah.
I think that she.
But if you could I just take my one shot for once? I would like to imitate the.
Okay.
I would like to imitate the guest on Nancy Grace's program. All right, and scene. Okay.
Yeah, she wasn't contributing much there, but I assume it's hard to get in.
No, you couldn't spin.
With Nancy Grace.
She was on a roll.
Yeah. So Nancy Grace showed a lot of emotion there. I mean, if that's genuine empathy for Michael Brown and his family and the community, then that's great. I think that, look, she has made a lot of mistakes in the past. I think that she basically is a purveyor of tragedy porn, and she likes to imagine the worst about people. But in this case, she's doing the right thing, and it's perhaps possible that she will introduce to her audience a different take on this community and its issues, and perhaps cause them to have a little bit of empathy.
You don't need to look at just take the win. You don't need to. You don't need to look for a win in the future.
I would like a win. Also, one other point: if she actually, as someone who's presenting to grand jurors, 75 to over 100 cases in one day, there are some major issues in our criminal justice system that need to be fixed. Because that's too many for one day.
It is, but it means like 3 minutes a case, which means you're just presenting the most compelling evidence that you have. Which again,
I guess that's true.
It just proves what Robert McCullough didn't do, which is present the evidence that would have shown that there was a case to be made, not that it was beyond a reasonable doubt. That's not what you have to achieve with a grand jury. You just show your case. By the way, have you seen Gone Girl?
I did see Gone Girl.
It's worth mentioning Missy Pyle, who really does, I think, a terrific job as the Nancy Grace type character in Gone Girl.
It was just great.
She's good. She's really good.
It was so good that I almost feel like Nancy Grace can't have watched it, because if she could, how can you go back on the air and do what you do after you've been eviscerated in that way? But anyway, great movie too. Okay, we're going to go to our first break. When we come back, we've got a little bit more Ferguson. Hopefully, though, we'll also have some hashtag TYT Live tweets from you that we can read on the air. We'll be back in just a few.
What's up, guys? I've worked at the Young Turks for nearly 8 years now, and even though I love news and politics, I've always been really passionate about fashion. So now all of a sudden, we're launching a fashion and lifestyle show here on the Young Turks network called Styleology.
Taking pride in your appearance and dressing and hearing it from real people is the main message that you want to get across to you guys. So make sure to stay tuned. We're going to bring you fun segments and just looking at how you can basically further yourself and be self-confident in how you dress.
Hey, Hansberry.
Hello. Yeah, what would you think if you saw me walking in with a double-breasted blazer?
I would think, whoa, he's looking quite dapper.
That's the second time you've impersonated my accent.
That was a segment from hour one of the show.
Now for the better hour, the second hour.
Drums. You can get the whole show on TYT-12.01.14.
Welcome to the Young Turks. It's the second hour, and Gina Grad is joining us. All-woman show, which doesn't happen often, which I love. So you know the deal. Tweet to us using hashtag TYT Live. We will respond to some of your tweets. We will read some of your tweets out loud. The second hour today is actually, or I should say the second 40-minute portion of the show is kind of heavy. There are a lot of really important stories to cover. I've been gone for a week, which was freaking awesome. I'm not going to lie. It's nice to be back, I guess. It is. It's nice to be back. But yeah, lots of important stories to cover. Gina, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Good?
Thanks for asking.
All right, so let's get started. A story that a lot of you guys have been sending us over the past few weeks, and it is an important one to cover. A woman by the name of Kelly Savage has been behind bars for more than 19 years after her husband beat her 3.5-year-old son to death. Now, she took no role in the beating death of her son. However, she was convicted of the crime along with her husband because, according to prosecutors, she didn't do enough to leave the abusive man. Now, let me tell you exactly what the conviction is of. It is, both of them, I should say, were convicted of torture and first-degree murder. Remember, she's not the one who beat up the 3.5-year-old. The man did, and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. In 1998, nearly 3 years after her son's death, years Kelly Savage spent in jail, she entered California's Valley State Prison for Women. This year marks her 19th year in prison. So exactly why is this happening? And this isn't an isolated incident. Apparently there are other women throughout the country who are serving life sentences without the chance of parole because their abusive husbands or their abusive significant others beat their children to death. Well, it turns out that 30 states have a specific law that allows this type of action to be taken against the woman. Nearly 30 states, including California, have failure to protect laws that criminalize a parent's inability to protect their children, okay? Now, BuzzFeed did an investigation in this to see how widespread it is, and while there aren't really any hard numbers on it, what they did find was that 28 mothers have been incarcerated in various states for not protecting their children despite evidence that they themselves were being abused. Now, if you're wondering, all right, well, what's this woman's story? Was she also being abused by this man? What's going on? Well, yes, not only was she being abused by him, which, by the way, his name is Mark Savage. Apparently, she had an entire lifetime of abuse. Let me give you the details. As a child, she was repeatedly beaten and raped by a number of people, including her father, her uncle, her stepmother's stepfather, and a trusted friend of her father. There was some evidence that she did take some measures in order to leave this man before he beat her 3.5-year-old son to death, but apparently that wasn't enough information to convince jurors that she shouldn't be found guilty of this crime.
This is so sick, and I'm so sorry that in 2014 we're having this conversation, but thank God somebody's having this conversation.
Yeah.
I couldn't find the exact wording, what they called it. It's leaving violence, fleeing violence, something like that, when the abuser finds out that you're trying to leave and then doubles down on the abuse and, you know, and almost kills you because he's so out of control of the situation. And I think it said in her case, she was advised on a hotline to get her children's birth certificates, to get her paperwork in order, and he found her doing it.
Yes.
So it actually, like, I feel like I have a grapefruit stuck in my throat just talking about this. It makes me want to burst into tears. It's so sad that this woman has been convicted of something so horrific that she was the victim of. It's a weird carousel that we can't get off of, that I can't totally wrap my head around. And I think, as an outsider, if you just heard this child died from a beating from his father and his mother didn't protect him, you're like, oh. Well, maybe she needs to be punished. And when you dig down a little deeper, you realize, wait a second, we need to rethink this.
Right. I mean, it's important to use human judgment and look at everything on a case-by-case basis. Have there been stories in the past where a man is sexually abusing a child, the mother knows about it, and she's not doing anything about it? Of course. But this is very different from those types of cases. She herself was a victim of the abuse. She herself felt helpless, and also you don't know what the financial situation is of this woman. You don't know if she has any access to a shelter. I mean, she has 2 children. She probably doesn't have the financial means to protect herself and to take care of herself. And so that's not, you know, making excuses for her so she doesn't leave him. As you know, she already took steps in order to leave him. He finds out and then he beats her.
Right.
Okay, but it's amazing to me that after living a life of abuse, she's now locked away behind bars for the rest of her life without the possibility of parole. However, there is a solution, a potential solution to this, which I'll get to in just a second. But do you have something?
Well, there was something in here that was so shocking, I'm afraid to misquote it, because it said something like the jury found that she was proven by the other side, by the, you know, whatever, the husband.
Prosecutors?
Thank you. That she enjoyed the abuse.
Yes. So the prosecutors did not necessarily prove that, but the argument made by the prosecutors was that she enjoyed the abuse, which is absurd, and I can't believe that that kind of argument resonated with the jurors, but apparently it did. Now, there was one expert that was speaking on her behalf, but there was an interesting conflict of interest there, because apparently this expert who talked about how it's really difficult for victims of abuse to leave these husbands was also dealing with a daughter who was facing similar charges for a similar crime. So that probably influenced the jurors as well. Now, is there a solution to all of this? Is there a way to help people who are serving life sentences for this type of stuff? Well, it turns out that there is. In 2001, California passed Section 1473.5 of the Penal Code, which allows incarcerated abuse survivors convicted of defending themselves to file a writ of habeas corpus if expert testimony about battering and its effects was not presented during their trial. In 2004, it was expanded to allow abuse survivors convicted of any violent felony to file a petition. Now, California Attorney General Kamala Harris is the person who gets to decide whether or not this new law can be applied to this particular case, and so far she has denied it twice. Which is depressing. However, Kamala Harris has changed her mind about previous cases. So those who are defending Savage are saying, well, maybe, you know, she'll change her mind on this. But there is a change.org petition that you guys can sign. And so far, over 7,500 people have signed it. And hopefully that will push Harris to change her mind on this.
Absolutely. And I think if nothing else, this just shines such a huge spotlight on the answer that when people ask, well, why doesn't she just leave? Why doesn't she take her stuff and take her kids and just leave? You know why? Because it gets worse. So it's so easy when, you know, for those of us who are privileged enough not to have been in this situation or any horrific situations, it's easy to sit there and go, well, that wouldn't be me.
You don't know. You don't know what that situation is like.
No idea.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to something a little less serious, but also hilarious. An Illinois woman is being sued by an employee at a public library after she basically spread a lot of misinformation about the library employee. Now, there is a pajamas media conservative blogger by the name of Megan Fox. She doesn't look like the Megan Fox you're thinking about, but she is very much against pornography. She's very much against public education, which is why she homeschools all three of her kids.
I'm for both those things, by the way.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
I'm pro both those things.
Okay.
Go ahead,
all right,
sorry.
Interesting. She is also a person who thinks that Obama was not born in the United States. I mean, she is against governmental programs or any type of governmental entity, including public libraries, which is why she's kind of going after this public library. Anyway, one day she goes in, she claims that she needed to go to the library because her phone wasn't working and she had a work-related emergency that she needed to tend to. When she got into the library with her children, her young children, she says, she realized that there was a section for adults and a section for young children. And so she needed to go to the adult section to use the computers, and the library employee told her, well, you can't take your kids up there, that's adults only, they need to be 18 years or older to use those computers. And she's like, well, I have a friend with me that can take care of my kids, but what if I didn't? What do I do? And the library employee told her, well, you have a friend to take care of your kids, let the friend take care of your kids and go take care of business. So she did, and apparently she found something that was appalling. Take a look.
I walked into the adult computer room, and there was a man right in front of me where I was sitting with giant photographs on the screen of naked, oiled up women, okay? Breasts out on the screen in the public library. Now, there are no shields, you know, around the computers. You can see at what everyone is looking at. There was another woman sitting across from him laughing maniacally like she was on meth or something to herself. It was like a mental institution up there. And I'm supposed to take my children in there so I can check my email real quick? Absurd. Anyway, I took care of what I had to take care of in the 5 minutes I said it would take me and went back downstairs. I said to the same woman behind the desk that I had just talked to, Excuse me, but here's why. You should allow parents with children to use the children's computers. Because if I had taken my children up there, like you suggested, I would have exposed them to pornography.
Okay, so the library employee did not suggest, like, oh yeah, take your kids up there to the adult section. She kept saying, like, that's for 18 and older individuals, right? But she kept saying, well, I have my young kids with me. I want my kids to go. So I think at some point the library employee might have, I don't even believe what this Megan Fox woman is saying, suggested, okay, fine, then go ahead and take the kids.
Right.
But yes, a lot of public libraries do have this policy. They don't ban pornography in the adult section. It's a First Amendment issue. They consider it a First Amendment issue, which is why they allow it.
Yeah, they don't put this safe search on.
Yeah.
Look, I think if you're in a position in your life where the only place you can masturbate is the library, cut this person some slack. I mean, clearly they have other problems. They are probably homeless. They can't pay their electric bill. They can't afford a computer, which is everyone has a computer. This person's been through enough. Don't chastise them for, trying to pleasure themselves up by the adult section.
I don't believe her. I don't believe her for a second, and I don't think anyone's masturbating in the library. I think that if you are masturbating in the library, you're going to get the cops called on you, and you're going to get arrested for public indecency.
Now,
right? And so, I'm sorry, Gina, I just have to jump in really quick. I don't understand her obsession with checking out what other people are doing on the computer. Like, is that what she does at work? Does she go around looking at the other coworkers' computer screens? Like, oh no, you can't be looking at that. What if there were children in here? Dude, you're the one who's imposing. You're the one who's bringing your kids to the library. Yeah. And basically, I don't even, what's the right word?
Dumb.
It's the adult section.
She's a dumb.
She's unbearable. Anyway,
and that's
continue.
the thing. Like, I get her point. Like, you're a library. You think a library is a very wholesome place, and they have the little circle with the little trains, and you're like, oh my God, it's tits on oil and whatever she said. But given the other things you said about this particular Megan Fox, it's hard to take her seriously. It's hard not to find this hilarious. And like I said, if you have to walk or take the bus 5 blocks you have enough problems.
Yeah.
Megan Fox, leave these people alone.
So she doesn't want to leave them alone. In fact, her YouTube channel right now is dedicated to a library investigation. And as a result, this very, very pressing matter, this is, serious journalism.
Right.
She's done the following, She's filed hundreds of Freedom of Information Act requests on library policies and employees. She's also filed at least 34 complaints with the Illinois Attorney General alleging transparency law violations by library staffers.
Aye.
Now, there is a very, very specific person that she's going after. Bridget Bittman, who is an employee at the library, and she has basically defamed her in every way that she can online, and now Bittman is suing her for defamation.
Good.
Now, as a result of all of these Freedom of Information documents that she's filed, it's cost the suburban Chicago library more than $125,000 in legal fees and keeps 2 library employees busy for about 35 hours a week.
Does Megan Fox not understand what a library is? They're not making any money by renting the books. They just give you the books for free. They don't have $125,000 to deal with this.
When you watch her videos, you can just sense the disdain that she has for public libraries, right? Like, she has that conservative mentality. Why are my tax dollars going toward a public library? It's government waste. They don't know how to function properly. They're incompetent. It's the same thing over and over again that you would hear from most conservatives. Now, what did she do when it came to Bridget Bittman? Well, Fox apparently found a photo online through a Google image search of Bittman holding a bottle of champagne, which she posted on her own Facebook page and suggested that she drank alcohol while engaged in work duties at the library. Wow. Why are you wasting your time? The thing that kind of makes me laugh about this is she thinks that she's doing like
the
serious
Lord's work.
Journalism.
Yeah, and that. Doesn't she has children. This is what this started this whole thing,
Yes.
right? So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody got the Child Protective Services involved and said, with the amount of time you're spending trying to take down a library, which is the worst action hero movie ever, you might want to stop neglecting your children, because that seems like a lot of time being wasted and not a lot of time being a parent.
That's actually a really good point. It's a really good point. Well, now she's facing that lawsuit. We'll see how it goes, but it's just amazing to me how she thinks she's doing important work.
Oh, Lord.
All right, let's move on. James Watson is one of the co-discoverers of DNA. In fact, he was one of the people who discovered DNA structure, and of course that is a very important foundation of the scientific field. Well, recently he made it known to everyone that he will be auctioning off his Nobel Prize because he is broke. Now, why is he broke? What happened? Why is he auctioning off this very, very important prize? Well, it turns out that in the past, he made a few racist comments about black people, and now people refuse to hire him as a result. Let me give you the specific examples according to Raw Story. In a 2007 interview with the Sunday Times, Watson claimed that he was inherently gloomy about the prospect of Africa because, quote, all our social policies are based on the fact that their intelligence is the same as ours, whereas all the testing says not really.
Oh,
he continues.
God.
I know, he continues. Moreover, while he admitted that everyone wants to believe that all races are born with equal intelligence, anyone who has to deal with black employees finds this not true. Okay. So he doesn't understand why people don't want to hire him now, and he doesn't have any income, and so he has to auction off his Nobel Prize. So wow.
Oy.
So how much?
I loved you on Tales from the Crypt, by the way.
How much is he expected to get for his Nobel Prize? $3.5 million.
Wow.
In fact, the reserve is $2.5 million, and apparently the auction house is arguing that he will definitely meet the reserve.
But I don't really understand being able to auction off a prize. It's like, so what? You bought it. You didn't earn it. Nobody. It's like you can't sell an Emmy or an Oscar. I didn't get it just because I stole it from somebody and they're out of their car.
Rich people. I don't know.
Here's my favorite part of this whole story. He's supposed to be super smart, right? Okay, so he was quoted as saying, and I'm just taking the end, where he says, and science finds not really. Is not really a technical term?
I guess so.
Okay, just making sure.
I mean, he's smarter than me. He's the one who found DNA structure.
Right.
Now, I'm sure he apologized for this, right? Well, let me give you his apology. He apologized for his remarks, saying that he was not a racist in a conventional way, and that the journalist interviewing him somehow wrote that I'm worried about people in Africa because of their low IQ, and you're not supposed to say that. Wow, that's quite an apology. James Watson, congratulations. You seem like a really bright guy.
Isn't that also bad? Isn't that a Brad Paisley song, The Accidental Racist? That's a song, right? So maybe it's now dedicated to this guy, Mr. Watson.
Oh my gosh.
That was such a non-apology.
That was like the top non-apology of the century.
And I mean, if you want to hire him, go ahead and hire him. But seeing as how he said horrible things about African American employees, I certainly wouldn't put him in middle management to oversee anybody. But that's just me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredible how I think this is a perfect example of how people are usually a mixed bag, right?
Yeah.
Like you might be really intelligent, you might be really smart, you might have skills and talents that are important for a specific field, but at the same time, you can be an absolute idiot when it comes to other things.
Yeah. And this is like, use this power for good or evil. If he understands DNA better than the rest of us, he can start doing horrible things or withholding things or doing little, alchemy because he thinks, well, this race isn't super smart and this race is kind of smart. I know DNA structure.
Yeah.
So that's like pretty like Mr. Burnsy. I don't like it.
That's actually a really great point. I mean, we use scientific evidence in order to explain the world around us. And if you have a scientist who's going to possibly pawn off non-science as real science, it could have a really bad effect on society. So,
especially when they're throwing around hardcore science terms like not really. He's an idiot. Thanks, though, for the DNA.
Yeah. All right, we got to take a quick break. Let's do that. And when I come back, a government is planning on banning emails after work hours. I'll tell you which government that is. You liked that, didn't you?
Well, if you like that, you'll love the whole show. TYT-Network.com. Get the whole show as a member.